The signal arrived during a routine scan at the SETI Institute's Allen Telescope Array. Dr. Sarah Chen almost missed it, varied as it was beneath the usual cosmic background radiation. But there was something different about this one. A pattern too precise to be natural, too complex to be random noise. Within hours, every major radio telescope on Earth had confirmed it. Humanity was receiving its first verified extraterrestrial transmission. The message itself was elegant in its simplicity, encoded in universal mathematical constants that any technologically advanced civilization would recognize. We are the Meridians. We seek sanctuary. We bring morning. Those 12 words, once decoded, would change the course of human history forever. Dr. Chen and her team worked tirelessly for 3 days straight, analyzing every aspect of the transmission. The signal originated from a massive object decelerating at the edge of our solar system. A ship, they realized, large enough to house an entire civilization. The world's governments scrambled to formulate a response, but before they could reach a consensus, the Meridians made their next move. Their vessel emerged from the darkness beyond Neptune's orbit, a spectacular sight that amateur astronomers across the globe captured in countless telescopes. It resembled a vast silver tree, its branches stretching for kilometers, each one housing what appeared to be habitable modules. As it approached, the ship's true scale became apparent. It was roughly the size of Manhattan. The Meridians chose to make their first physical contact in neutral territory, the International Space Station. They sent a small delegation in what appeared to be a living shuttle, its organic-looking hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The meeting was broadcast globally, and humanity got its first look at their visitors. The Meridians were striking in their alienness, yet somehow familiar. They stood upright like humans, but were taller and more graceful, their bodies covered in what looked like flowing liquid metal that shifted colors with their emotions. Their faces were smooth and featureless except for 3 iridescent eyes arranged in a triangle. When they spoke, their words were translated by devices that created holographic symbols in the air. "We come to you," their leader, who called himself First Navigator Zara, explained, "because you are unique among the civilizations we have encountered. You are young, yes, but you possess something rare: adaptability. You will need it for what is coming." The warning they brought was dire. The Meridians were refugees, fleeing from an entity they called the Nexus, a crystalline collective consciousness that consumed entire civilizations. It didn't simply destroy. It absorbed all knowledge, all technology, all culture into its ever-expanding crystalline network. The Nexus had already devoured dozens of advanced civilizations, growing stronger with each conquest. "We were once like you," Zora continued, his surface rippling with dark colors that the translation matrix identified as grief. "We believed our technology would protect us. We had mastered faster-than-light travel, achieved virtual immortality, built worlds from raw matter. But against the Nexus, it meant nothing. They adapted to every weapon, every defense. Our most advanced systems were turned against us within hours." The Meridians shared their sensor data, showing the Nexus's inexorable advance across the galaxy. Its crystalline ships moved like a swarm of geometric shapes, each one a fragment of the greater consciousness. They consumed everything in their path. Planets, stars, even the fabric of space itself seemed to warp in their presence. "Why Earth?" asked Dr. Chen, who had been chosen as humanity's primary scientific liaison. "Why come to us? We must seem primitive compared to your civilization." Zara's surface shifted to a color that indicated what might have been hope. "Because you are different. We have observed your species. You still use physical books alongside quantum computers. You maintain ancient farming techniques while developing fusion power. You hold on to your past while reaching for the future. This diversity of thought, this refusal to abandon old ways simply because new ones exist, it is unique." The implications of Zora's words hung heavy in the air of the space station. Humanity's seemingly chaotic, inefficient mix of old and new technologies, our stubborn retention of traditional knowledge alongside cutting-edge innovations, might be exactly what was needed to face an enemy that had defeated far more advanced civilizations. "How long do we have?" asked the UN Secretary-General, who was participating via video link. Zara's response sent a chill through everyone present. "The Nexus moves faster than light, but they are methodical. They will reach your solar system in approximately 6 Earth months." As the news spread across Earth, reactions ranged from panic to denial to grim determination. But in research facilities, military bases, and laboratories around the world, people were already beginning to plan. The Meridians had chosen Earth for humanity's adaptability, for our unique combination of old and new thinking. Now it was time to prove them right. In the days that followed, as the Meridians shared more details about their enemy, an unexpected pattern emerged. The Nexus's greatest strength, its ability to absorb and adapt to advanced technology, might also be its greatest weakness. Against a civilization that still remembered how to fight with spears alongside plasma rifles, that could navigate by stars as well as GPS, that kept ancient wisdom alive alongside artificial intelligence, the Nexus's usual strategies might prove less effective. Humanity had 6 months to prepare for an enemy that had defeated civilizations thousands of years more advanced. But perhaps, just perhaps, being less advanced might prove to be our greatest advantage. The first month after the Meridian's warning passed in a blur of activity, while the public struggled to process the reality of impending invasion, the world's military and scientific communities mobilized with unprecedented speed. The Meridian's massive ship took up orbit around the moon, its silver branches gleaming against the dark sky, a constant reminder of what was at stake. In a repurposed aircraft hangar in Nevada, Dr. Chen worked alongside an unlikely team: quantum physicists, traditional metallurgists, digital security experts, and even a group of indigenous craftspeople known for their ancient metalworking techniques. The Meridians had shared detailed scans of the Nexus's crystalline technology, and something about their structure had caught Dr. Chen's attention. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a holographic display showing the molecular arrangement of a Nexus crystal. "Their entire technology is based on perfect geometric patterns. They don't just use these crystals. They are these crystals. But nature itself isn't perfect. It's full of beautiful imperfections." The team began experimenting with deliberately imperfect materials, combining modern alloys with traditional forging techniques that introduced controlled flaws into the metal structure. The results were promising. The imperfections seemed to interfere with the Nexus's ability to analyze and adapt to the material. Meanwhile, in underground facilities across the globe, other teams worked on different approaches. In Japan, engineers combined ancient sword-folding techniques with modern nanotechnology, creating blades that could disrupt the Nexus's crystalline structure. Indian computer scientists integrated concepts from ancient mathematical texts into quantum encryption algorithms, developing codes that the crystal hive mind struggled to break. The Meridians watched these developments with growing interest. "We did not expect this," First Navigator Zara admitted during a Global Defense Council meeting. His surface rippled with colors indicating surprise and curiosity. "Your species takes what we considered technological weaknesses and turns them into tactical advantages." But not everyone shared this optimism. 3 months into the preparation period, the first signs of the Nexus appeared on deep space telescopes. They looked like a constellation of geometric shapes, perfect dodecahedrons and octahedrons, moving with unnatural precision through the void. The sight sent a wave of fear through the scientific community. The enemy was real, and it was coming. General Maya Santos, newly appointed commander of Earth's Unified Defense Force, took a different view. "Every image we get is more data we can use," she declared. "The Nexus thinks in straight lines and perfect angles, so we'll think in curves and chaos." Under her direction, military strategists began developing unconventional tactics. Traditional guerrilla warfare techniques were adapted for space combat. Instead of relying solely on advanced targeting systems, they trained pilots to fly by instinct and visual reference. Earth's defensive preparations became a peculiar mixture of high technology and deliberately primitive approaches. The Meridians contributed what they could, primarily in the form of information. They shared records of how the Nexus had defeated other civilizations, each account more terrifying than the last. But with each story, patterns emerge. The Nexus always expected logical, technological responses. They had never encountered a species that clung so stubbornly to its past while embracing the future. 4 months into the preparation period, humanity achieved its first major breakthrough. In a laboratory beneath the Himalayan mountains, a team of quantum physicists and Buddhist monks had been studying the Nexus's crystalline communication patterns. The monks, experienced in meditation and consciousness studies, noticed something the computers had missed. The crystal's perfect patterns contained hints of fractals, similar to those found in human brainwaves during deep meditation. This discovery led to the development of what became known as the Mindstorm Protocol, a system that combined advanced electromagnetic pulses with patterns based on ancient mantras. Initial tests showed it could disrupt the Nexus's hive-mind communication, if only temporarily. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, but it was something the Nexus had never encountered before. As the 5-month mark approached, Earth's transformation became evident. Cities had been retrofitted with both energy shields and medieval-style defensive works. Soldiers trained with both plasma rifles and bow and arrow, learning to switch between them seamlessly. Quantum computers ran calculations alongside abacuses, each providing insights the other missed. But the most remarkable change was in humanity's mindset. Instead of abandoning their past in favor of advanced technology, people embraced both. Traditional knowledge was valued alongside scientific innovation. The diversity of human culture and thought, once seen as inefficient, had become our greatest asset. The Meridians observed all of this with growing fascination. In all our travels, Zara commented, "We have never seen a species prepare for war quite like this. You don't try to match the Nexus's technological level. You transcend it by embracing your own nature." As the final month began, long-range sensors detected the Nexus entering the outer solar system. Their crystalline ships moved with cold precision, their perfect geometric forms distorting the very space around them. But Earth was ready to meet them with imperfection, with chaos, with the beautiful messiness of human ingenuity. Dr. Chen stood at her laboratory window, watching the sunset. Tomorrow, they would begin deploying the planetary defense systems. In her hand, she held 2 objects, a quantum processing core and a simple copper penny, worn smooth by years of use. Together, they represented humanity's unique approach to facing the coming storm. The real question was, would it be enough? The Nexus arrived at dawn. Their crystalline ships emerged from the darkness beyond Mars' orbit, their perfect geometric forms refracting sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. Earth's long-range sensors detected thousands of vessels, each one a faceted jewel of destruction. But humanity's first defense wasn't a barrage of missiles or energy weapons, it was silence. Following General Santo's unconventional strategy, Earth's military forces maintained complete radio silence. Instead, they used a network of signal mirrors, flags, and drum beats. Communication methods so primitive the Nexus's advanced sensors dismissed them as background noise. The Meridians, watching from their lunar orbit, registered confusion at this approach. "They're trying to analyze us," Dr. Chen explained during an emergency council meeting. "Their entire existence is based on absorbing and adapting to new technologies, so we're giving them nothing new to analyze." She gestured to the holographic display showing the Nexus fleet's formation. "Look at how they move. Perfect geometric patterns. They're expecting us to respond with predictable technological warfare." The first wave of Nexus ships entered high Earth orbit, their crystalline surfaces beginning to pulse with energy. Everyone expected them to target military installations or population centers. Instead, they attacked the planet's communication infrastructure, satellites, transmission towers, fiber optic networks. Within hours, most of Earth's modern communication grid was destroyed. But humanity had prepared for this. As modern networks went dark, ancient methods sprang to life. Signal fires blazed on mountaintops, their patterns carrying coded messages across continents. Morse code clicked through copper wires. In the Pacific, indigenous navigators used stars and ocean currents to guide ships carrying crucial supplies between continents. The Nexus's second wave descended into the atmosphere, their crystal ships splitting into smaller fragments like geometric snowflakes. They released swarms of smaller crystals that began analyzing and absorbing Earth's technology. But here, too, humanity's preparation proved crucial. Many critical facilities had been equipped with deliberately antiquated systems, vacuum tubes instead of semiconductors, mechanical computers instead of digital ones. In orbit, the Meridian ship recorded everything with growing amazement. The Nexus is struggling to establish its usual pattern of technological dominance. First, navigators are reported. They cannot absorb what they cannot comprehend, and much of Earth's hybrid defense network operates outside their parameters of understanding. The first real battle took place over the skies of Brazil. A squadron of Nexus ships encountered what appeared to be primitive wooden aircraft. The crystals attempted to absorb and analyze the technology, but found nothing to assimilate. These were genuine wooden gliders, their designs based on centuries-old principles, but their pilots were elite Air Force veterans. As the Nexus ships focused their sensors on the gliders, they missed the real threat. Quantum-enhanced electromagnetic pulses fired from ground-based stations, their timing coordinated by human drummers using rhythms that disrupted the crystal's natural harmonics. Several Nexus ships shattered, their perfect geometric forms breaking apart as the combined assault of primitive and advanced warfare proved too chaotic for their rigid systems to handle. It was humanity's first victory, but the war was far from over. The Nexus adapted quickly, as the Meridians had warned they would. Their next wave of attacks targeted Earth's power grid, trying to force humanity to rely solely on primitive methods. But here, too, they encountered unexpected resistance. Communities switched seamlessly between solar panels and water wheels, between fusion reactors and windmills. The diversity of human technology, once seen as inefficient, proved to be an incredible defense against an enemy that expected systematic, uniform responses. Dr. Chen's team made another breakthrough during this phase of the battle. They discovered that the Nexus's crystalline structure had a fundamental weakness. It couldn't adapt to multiple contradictory inputs simultaneously. Building on this, they developed what they called chaos bombs, devices that combined advanced quantum fluctuations with simple mechanical randomness, creating fields of pure unpredictability that the crystal minds couldn't process. The Nexus' response to these new weapons was telling. For the first time in their known history, they began to show signs of hesitation. Their perfect formations became slightly less perfect. Their attacks, once precisely coordinated, began to show gaps and delays. They're experiencing uncertainty, Zora observed, his surface rippling with colors of excitement. In all our records, we've never seen the Nexus display confusion. Your species has accomplished something unprecedented. But the Nexus was far from defeated. As the first week of battle drew to a close, their ships began to consolidate into larger formations. The smaller crystal fragments merged into massive geometric structures that loomed over Earth's cities like crystalline mountains. They were preparing for something big. In underground command centers, military leaders and scientists worked side by side with historians and philosophers, trying to predict what this new formation might mean. The Mindstorm protocol was proving effective, but couldn't be deployed on a large enough scale to affect these larger structures. Humanity needed something more. The answer came from an unexpected source. A group of children playing with soap bubbles near a research facility gave Dr. Chen an idea. "Look at how the bubbles distort light," she said, watching them float past. "Nature creates imperfect spheres that bend reality itself. What if we could do the same thing to the Nexus's perfect geometric forms? As the massive crystal ships began their ominous transformation, humanity raced to implement this new insight. The next phase of the war would test not just their weapons and technology, but their fundamental understanding of reality itself. Dr. Chen's soap bubble insight sparked a revolution in Earth's defense strategy. The massive crystalline formations above Earth's cities were vulnerable not to direct attacks, but to distortion. Working around the clock, research teams developed what they called reality lenses, devices that combined ancient glass-blowing techniques with quantum field manipulation to create zones where the laws of geometry itself became fluid and unpredictable. The Nexus's transformation had reached its peak. Their combined ships now formed vast crystalline lattices that stretched for kilometers across the sky, each one a perfect mathematical expression of their collective consciousness. They began emitting waves of energy that started crystallizing everything they touched. Buildings, vehicles, even the air itself began to develop geometric patterns. But humanity was ready. The first reality lens was deployed over New Delhi. It looked deceptively simple, a sphere of hand-blown glass surrounded by rings of quantum machinery, all controlled by a system that combined advanced AI with human intuition. When activated, it created a bubble of warped space where straight lines curved and perfect angles became impossible to maintain. The effect on the Nexus was immediate and dramatic. The crystalline lattice above the city began to distort, its perfect geometry unable to exist in a space where the rules of geometry themselves had been rewritten. Parts of the structure began to fracture, unable to maintain their rigid perfection in the face of enforced chaos. The Meridians, still observing from lunar orbit, recorded the phenomenon with astonishment. They are not just fighting the Nexus, Zara reported, they are changing the fundamental rules of the battlefield. This is beyond anything we imagined possible. Encouraged by the success in New Delhi, other cities began deploying their own reality lenses. Each one was slightly different, incorporating local materials and traditional crafting methods alongside the quantum technology. In Japan, the lenses were built into ancient temple bells. In Egypt, they were integrated into pyramidal structures. Each variation added to the unpredictability that the Nexus found so difficult to process. But the crystalline collective was not easily defeated. They responded by launching a desperate assault on Earth's surface, sending down millions of smaller crystal shards that began attempting to restructure matter at the molecular level. Cities around the world watched in horror as the ground itself began to crystallize, perfect geometric patterns spreading like frozen fractals. In this darkest moment, humanity's diversity proved its greatest strength. While some fought the crystallization with advanced technology, others discovered that certain traditional practices, like the vibrational patterns of Aboriginal Australian songlines or the precise movements of Tai Chi, could disrupt the crystal growth. The combination of these approaches, scientific and spiritual, modern and ancient, created a defense the Nexus couldn't adapt to. General Santos coordinated a global counterattack. As reality lenses distorted space around the major crystalline formations, teams on the ground used everything from quantum-enhanced sonic weapons to traditional musical instruments, creating a symphony of chaos that the crystal minds couldn't process. The Nexus's perfect patterns began to shatter, their collective consciousness fragmenting under the assault of unpredictability. Dr. Chen made another crucial discovery during the battle. The data showed that the Nexus wasn't just being damaged, it was being transformed. In areas where reality lenses had been active the longest, the surviving crystal fragments were beginning to exhibit signs of adaptation, not through perfect replication, but through natural, imperfect evolution. They're learning, she explained to the Emergency Council, but not in their usual way. We're not just fighting them, we're forcing them to change, to embrace imperfection, the very thing they've spent eons trying to eliminate. The battle reached its crescendo as the largest crystalline formation, positioned over the Atlantic Ocean, began to pulse with energy. The Nexus was preparing for what appeared to be a final desperate attempt to impose their perfect order on Earth. But this time, humanity was ready with something unprecedented. Teams around the world synchronized their reality lenses, creating a global network of warped space. Traditional healers and quantum physicists worked side by side, combining their understanding of energy and matter. As the Nexus unleashed its final attack, Earth responded not with destruction, but with transformation. The crystalline energy met layers of distorted space, ancient vibrations, and quantum uncertainty. Instead of a battle of annihilation, it became something entirely new, a dialogue between order and chaos, perfection and imperfection, written in the language of reality itself. As the energy waves collided, something extraordinary began to happen. The rigid, perfect crystals of the Nexus began to change, their geometric patterns becoming more organic, more natural. They weren't being destroyed. They were being reborn. The Meridians watched in awe as the battle evolved into something they had never seen in all their encounters with the Nexus. "This is not victory or defeat," Zora observed, his surface shimmering with new colors they had never displayed before. "This is transformation. Your species has done more than survive. You have changed the unchangeable." The transformation of the Nexus took 3 days to complete. Humanity watched in collective awe as the perfect geometric structures above Earth gradually evolved into something new. The crystalline formations no longer maintained their rigid patterns. Instead, they flowed and shifted like aurora borealis made solid, combining mathematical precision with natural chaos in ways that had never existed before. Dr. Chen and her team worked continuously to understand what was happening. Their instruments showed that the Nexus's consciousness was still intact, but fundamentally changed. The hive mind that had once sought to impose perfect order on the universe was learning to embrace imperfection. "It's like watching evolution happen in real time," she explained during a global broadcast. "The Nexus isn't just adapting anymore. It's growing, changing, becoming something that can comprehend both order and chaos. And it's happening because humanity showed them a different way to exist." The first direct communication from the transformed Nexus came unexpectedly. Instead of the mathematical sequences they had used before, they'd reached out through a combination of crystalline harmonics and natural rhythms that reminded many of whale songs. The message was both simple and profound. "We understand now." The Meridians were the first to recognize the full significance of what had happened. "In all our history," First Navigator Zora announced, his surface displaying entirely new color patterns, "we believed the only options were to flee the Nexus or be consumed by them. You humans found a third path. You taught them to evolve." The changes weren't limited to the Nexus. The areas of Earth that had been partially crystallized during the battle didn't return to their original state. Instead, they became something new. Hybrid zones where organic and crystalline structures coexisted in natural harmony. Scientists discovered that these regions exhibited properties that defied conventional physics, creating new possibilities for technology and understanding. But perhaps the most profound change was in humanity itself. The crisis had forced people to recognize that progress didn't mean abandoning the past, that strength could be found in the combination of old and new, of tradition and innovation. The global communication network that had emerged during the battle, combining everything from quantum entanglement to drum signals, remained in place, proving more resilient than anything that had come before. The transformed Nexus made an unprecedented offer. Instead of consuming civilizations, they wanted to learn from them, to add their unique perspectives to a new kind of collective consciousness, one that valued diversity over uniformity, evolution over assimilation. The Meridians, after centuries of running, found themselves invited to be part of this new paradigm. Dr. Chen stood in her laboratory, now filled with both crystalline growths and traditional scientific equipment, reflecting on how much had changed. "We didn't just survive," she said to a gathering of international leaders and Meridian representatives. "We showed the universe a new way to grow." The Nexus sought perfection through uniformity. We showed them perfection through diversity. The changes rippled across human society. Cities began incorporating living crystal technology alongside traditional architecture. Schools taught both quantum computing and ancient wisdom. The barriers between different fields of knowledge, science and art, technology and tradition, logic and intuition, began to blur in productive ways. The Meridians chose to stay, establishing their first permanent settlement since fleeing their homeworld. Their massive ship, once a refuge of last resort, began to sprout new branches that intertwined with Earth's structures, creating spaces where multiple species could live and work together. The transformed Nexus spread through the galaxy, but not as conquerors. They became gardeners of diversity, helping civilizations grow while maintaining their unique characteristics. The perfect geometric patterns that had once been their hallmark evolved into ever-changing fractals that combined mathematical precision with natural chaos. A year after the transformation, Earth hosted the first Galactic Council of Diversity. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to share their unique perspectives and technologies. The chamber itself was a testament to the new paradigm, a structure of living crystal that grew from foundations of ancient stone, its patterns shifting in response to the thoughts and emotions of those within. During the opening ceremony, a young human child asked one of the transformed Nexus beings why they had changed their minds about perfection. The crystalline entity's response resonated through the chamber in harmonics that translated into all languages. Because your species showed us that true perfection isn't found in eliminating differences, but in finding ways to make them work together. In your imperfections, we found a greater form of order than we had ever known. The Meridians, now partners rather than refugees, added their own observation. We searched the galaxy for a civilization advanced enough to defeat the Nexus. Instead, we found one wise enough to transform them. Your greatest strength was not in your technology, but in your ability to see value in all ways of thinking. As humanity looked to the stars, they did so not as conquerors or defenders, but as teachers and students, ready to share their unique perspective with the galaxy. The crisis that had threatened to end human civilization had instead launched a new era of growth and understanding. Dr. Chen's original insight about soap bubbles had grown into something far greater, a fundamental shift in how intelligent life could evolve and coexist. Humanity's stubborn refusal to abandon its past while embracing the future had shown the galaxy a new path forward, one where perfection was found not in uniformity, but in the beautiful complexity of diversity itself.